Hello, good evening. Good to be back with you. Sorry we had to miss last week. I had my daughter and her family were here, and it was just kind of hectic, to say the least. Plus, I had some doctor's appointments and just could not find the time to really get it done the way it should be, and I don't like to just throw things together. So we're going to take up tonight where we should have taken up last week, and we'll just move on from there. If that's okay with you, it's okay with me. God bless you. If you remember, we were getting ready to start the 11th chapter of Judges, and God gave warning. Remember to the people to the Israelites, and also to us, that if you want my blessing, then you have to do things my way. This is just the way God was, and that's the way He works. If you're going to if you want my blessing, I'll be happy to give it to you and take care of you as long as you follow my rules. Now, His warning that the Israelites got to the point where God is saying, you didn't follow my word, and you didn't go the way I wanted you to, so I'm not going to bless you like you want to be blessed. But God's warning is to say, his warning to know that He would no longer save Israel was more of a conditional warning. It was based on who they determined that they were going to serve at that particular moment. Were they going to serve God, or were they going to serve the Baals? If they elevate something else, some kind of an idol, into the position of God, like the Baals, if they elevate them into the position that God rightly deserved, then God's saying, if you're going to put them in my place, depend on them. Let them act out. Let them give you what you want. Let them be the object of your worship instead of me. Let them take care of it. Well, they're not, because that's just nothing but a piece of wood or some metal is put together. It's not going to be able to bless them or do anything for them. But that's just about what God was telling them. But He's also said, but if you'll put me first, if you put God in a position of prominence where He belongs, then He's free to do the work on your behalf. And it's the same way with us today. We have a tendency to want to put other things before God. We put our jobs, our families, all those things that we can think of before God, and put all our time into that, and no time into following God and doing what He wanted us to do. Israel would be far more comfortable, as we would, if they could learn just to live within God's laws. Follow God's laws, follow God's teachings, and you could do a whole lot better, live a whole lot better. But they have to discover that on their own. They couldn't seem to be, no matter how many times they were told, they just couldn't figure it out, so they have to discover it on their own. And they did each time. Remember the circle. That when it got back to they were happy and everything was going fine, they fell back into sin, and then, bam, everything went wrong. So they discovered it, and then they came out of it. Yet when God finally, when they finally turned back to God, He won't stand aloof. When he turns back to God, his heart will be touched, and he moves to action. Now, we're far happier when we learn to live within God's stated limits than we are when we're trying to do out there on our own. Okay, let's go on. Let's look at chapter 11. Chapter 11, verse 1. Now, remember in chapter 10, the last verse was and the people of the leaders of Gilead said to one another, "Who is the man who will begin the fight against the people of Ammon?" So they were looking for a leader. They were looking for a warrior, somebody that would lead the battle against the Amorites. "He shall be head over all the inhabitants of Gilead." So whoever we choose, whoever decides to step in and do this job for us, we're going to make him head of all of Gilead. Okay? So now we get to verse 1 in chapter 11. Now Jephthah, Jephthah, whether he's going to be our next judge. Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty man of valor. You heard that? Remember we heard that before back with Gideon. The name came to me finally. We heard that back with Gideon, that he was a mighty man of valor. That was the way that the angel approached him, remember, and addressed him as the mighty man of valor. And so here Jephthah was a mighty man of valor, but he was the son of a harlot. He was the son of a harlot. His mother was a prostitute. And Gilead begat Japheth. So Gilead was his father, and his mother was a prostitute. It doesn't say whether they were ever even married or not, so the chances are they weren't. Verse 2, see, Gilead's wife bore sons, and when his wife's son grew up, they drove Jephthah out and said to him, you shall have no inheritance in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman. So his mother you see, it's kind of funny the way God chooses people, but here was Jephthah. He was born in Gilead. His dad was Gilead. And his mother was a prostitute, and she had other sons. And as they grew up, they pushed Jephthah out because they didn't think he belonged there. He wasn't one of them because his father was Gilead. We don't know who the other fathers or the other guys were, but they pushed him out, and they said you can have no inheritance in your father's house, for you're the son of another woman. So if he was the son of another woman, and they pushed him out, where's he to go? And what's he to do? Okay. The Israelites were desperate. They'd been victims of the Amorites' oppression for 18 years. 18 long years they'd been under the Amorites. And despite the family rivalries among siblings, or half-siblings in this case, the elders of the Gilead called on the only man they knew that could rise up to the threat. And that was just Jephthah of Gilead. His name meant God opened. God has opened. So God has opened. Gilead, God has opened. Jephthah may be compared in contrasted with our last major character, Amalek. Remember, Amalek's mother was a concubine, and now Jephthah's mother is a harlot or a prostitute. Jephthah was raised by his father despite his brothers, even though his brothers didn't like the idea that didn't come from their mother, he came from another woman. His father, Gilead, still raised him. And it's likely that this event took place near or after the death of the father, near or after the death of Gilead, because they're talking about excluding him from an inheritance. Says you're not going to get any of the inheritance in our family. So consequently, Jephthah fled. He left. He says he couldn't take it, so he took off and he went over to the land of Tob, and where in time he became a natural leader over there. He had a band of misfits, that kind of followed in there together. Remember the Magnificent Seven? You ever see that movie? This is kind of what he had. He had this group together, and they had called on him now to be their leader. So verse 4, it came to pass after a time that the people of Ammon made war against Israel. Okay, so here they come after him. And so it was when the people of Ammon made war against Israel that the elders of Gilead went to get Jephthah from the land of Tob. So they were after him. Then they said to Jephthah, come and be our commander, that we may fight against the people of Ammon. So Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, did you not hate me and expel me from my father's house? Why have you come to me now when you are in distress? Didn't you throw me out because because I was supposed to be a misfit, because my mother was a harlot? You got rid of me. You didn't want me around. Now, why are you coming and begging me to come back? Now that there's things going on there. Verse 8, the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, that is why we have turned again to you now, that you may go with us and fight against the people of Ammon, and be our head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. So they wanted him not just to be the warrior, their captain. They wanted him to be the chief, the head over all of Gilead. Verse 9, so Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, if you take me back home to fight against the people of Ammon, and the Lord delivers them to me, shall I be your head? If you take me back, and I'm going to be the head, and the Lord delivers them to me. See how Jephthah thinks? He doesn't think like them. He's thinking about God being in charge of the battle. If the Lord leads them to me, shall I be your head? Am I going to be the head of the nation of Gilead if the Lord delivers the people to me and we win? In verse 10, and the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, the Lord will be a witness between us if we do not according to your words. Then Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead and the people, and they made him head in our... I'm sorry, this thing skipped on me. And the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, the Lord will be a witness between you and me. Okay, verse 11. Then Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and commander over them. And then Jephthah spoke all his words before the Lord in Mizpah. Okay, so it may be, well, that many years may have passed in time here, so that sometime later, during which time Jephthah had married and had his only child, which was a daughter. We'll hear about that in a moment. And now they've asked him to be their commander so they can fight the Ammonites. The word commander in this context refers only to the military leader, nothing more. Okay, that's what they asked him first. But then Jephthah's initial response was resistance to the rebuke. Do you hate me? Didn't you hate me and drive me from our father's house? Why do you come and now and now that you're in trouble, why are you coming after me now? They were turning to Jephthah not only as a commander, but also they wanted him to be their ruler or their head. So they said that if he wins, we want you to be our head, our ruler. If indeed the Lord does give victory over the Amorites, will I really be your head? He said. Jephthah had made a choice. He would now serve as ruler over the people that had rejected him. He was going to rule over the people that had rejected him all these years. Yet he's going to establish that rulership under a sovereign rule of the Lord of the covenant. See, he's going to be the ruler, but he's going to establish that ruler as under the covenant of God. Under the covenant of God. Verse 12. Now Jephthah sent messengers to the king of the people of Ammon, saying, what do you have against me that you have come to fight against me in my land? See, now he didn't say he wasn't going to go right out and just pick up his sword and run out there and start fighting them. He was a diplomat. He decided he would try to negotiate a peace with them first. So he sent that messenger and asked him, why are you fighting against me? Verse 13, and the king of the people of Ammon answered the messenger of Jephthah, because Israel took away my land when they came up out of Egypt, from the Arnon as far as the Jabbok, and to Jordan. Now therefore restore those lands peaceably. So Jephthah again sent messengers to the king of the people of Ammon, and he said to them, thus says Jephthah, Israel did not take away your land of Moab, nor the lands of the people of Ammon. For when Israel came up from Egypt, they walked through the wilderness as far as the Red Sea and came to Kadesh. And when Israel sent... I did it again. I did it again. Keep pushing that wrong button. I have my scriptures over here on my iPad, and sometimes I hit the wrong thing and it jumps all the way up to the end of it, and I have to go back and start it again. All right. Verse 13, and the king of the people of Ammon answered the messenger of Jephthah, because you, Israel, took away my land when they came up out of Egypt from the Arnon as far as, okay, so they didn't take away the land at all, did they? No, they didn't. So Jephthah sent them a message back, and he said to them, thus says Jephthah, Israel did not take away the land of Moab, nor the land of the people of Ammon. For when Israel came up from Egypt, they walked through the wilderness as far as the Red Sea and came to Kadesh. Then Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, please let me pass through your land. But the king of Edom would not heed. And in like manner they sent to the king of Moab, but he would not consent. So Israel remained in Kadesh, and they went along through the wilderness and bypassed the land of Edom and the land of Moab, and came to the east side of the land of Moab, and encamped on the other side of the Arnon. But they did not enter the border of Moab, for Arnon was a border of Moab. Then Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, king of the Heshbon. And Israel said to him, please let us pass through your land into our place. But Sihon did not trust Israel to pass through the territory. So Sihon gathered all his people together and encamped at Jahaz and fought against Israel. And the Lord God of Israel delivered Sihon and all his people into the hands of Israel, and they defeated them. Thus Israel gained possession of all the land of the Amorites, who inhabited that country. So they wouldn't let them pass through there either. So they decided they went to war with them, and God gave them that land through the battle. They were able to overtake him. Verse 22. They took possession of all the territory of the Amorites, from the Arnon to the Jabbok, and from the wilderness to Jordan. And now the Lord God of Israel has dispossessed the Amorites from before his people Israel. Should you then possess it? Will you not possess whatever Chemosh, your God, Chemosh is one of their idols, one of their gods, your God gives you to possess? So whatever the Lord our God takes possession of before us, we will possess. So whatever God gives us, we're going to possess it. And now, are you any better than Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever strive against Israel? Did he ever fight against them? While Israel dwelt in Heshbon and in its villages, and Aor and its villages, and in the cities along the banks of the Arnon for 300 years, why did you not recover them within that time? So, in other words, we've been possessing this for over 300 years. You've had plenty of time to take it back since then. Why did you wait till now? Verse 27, therefore I have not sinned against you, but you wrong me by fighting against me. May the Lord, the judge, render judgment this day between the children of Israel and the people of Ammon. So Jephthah functioned as a ruler, not just a general. Okay, he was the only judge who tried to use diplomacy to avert conflict. He's the only one that didn't go to war immediately, but you tried to use diplomacy, try to negotiate them with the enemies of Israel. Okay, verse 28. However, the king of the people of Ammon did not heed the words which Jephthah sent him. So, it's sad to say, but it was predictable results of the king of Ammon. He paid no attention to the message that Jephthah sent him. The wheels were already in motion for a military solution to this problem. He wanted to go to war. He was ready to go to war, and He wasn't going to let that little bunch of people from Israel intimidate him in any way. Verse 29. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah. All right, watch out now. And he passed through Gilead and Manasseh and passed through Mizpah of Gilead. And from Mizpah of Gilead he advanced towards the people of Ammon. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord and said, if you will indeed deliver the people of Ammon into my hands, then it will be that whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return in peace from the people of Ammon, shall surely be the Lord's, and I will offer it up as a burnt offering. Big mistake. The armed conflict couldn't be avoided. They were going to fight. They were going to go to battle. And the Spirit of the Lord came on Jephthah, and he advanced against the Amorites. And the results was that Israel subdued Ammon, including 20 towns from Aor to the vicinity of Minnith, and as far as Abel is from Kerim. Remember Julius Caesar? He once said, I came, I saw, I conquered. Veni, vidi, vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. Well, Jephthah changed that. He changed it around to say, I came, I saw, and God conquered. Yeah. All right. Verse 31. Now, here's the bad part, the bad thing that happened. He was doing so good. And prior to the battle that is described, he even though Jephthah had the empowerment of God's Spirit, he hesitated. His problem was not knowledge of God's will, but weak faith. And so he wanted to make a bargain with God. And he made a bad bargain with God, really. Verse 31 says that then it will be that whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me when I return in peace from the people of Ammon shall surely be the Lord's, and I will offer it up as a burnt offering. Okay. Verse 32. Jephthah advanced towards the people of Ammon to fight against them, and the Lord delivered them to his hands. So the Lord kept his side of the bargain. Now it was up to Jephthah. And he defeated them from Aor as far as Minnith, 20 cities, and to Abel Kerim with a very great slaughter. Thus the people of Ammon were subdued before the children of Israel. Now, he made this bargain. He said, the first thing that comes out of my house if I get the victory, when I go home, the first thing that comes out of my house, that's going to be God's. I'm going to give it up as a burnt offering. The vow consisted of the pledge that says, if you give the Amorites into my hands, whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me when I return in triumph from the Amorites will be the Lord's, and I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering. Okay. Now, in his role as defender, God granted Jephthah victory. At that point, you would expect it to read, and the land rested for 20 years, but instead, we read the tragedy. Flush from the victory, and ready to return to his life of respect and responsibility as the head over all God's people. It should have been the most joyous day of his life. However, as he returned to his home in Mizpah, who should come out to meet him but his daughter? It came to pass, verse 35, when he saw her, that he tore his clothes and said, Alas, my daughter, you have brought me very low. You are among those who trouble me, for I have given my word to the Lord, and I cannot go back on it. She said to him, My father, if you have given your word to the Lord, do to me according to what has gone out of your mouth, because the Lord has avenged you of your enemies and the people of Ammon. Then she said to her father, Let this thing be done for me. Let me alone for 2 months, that I may go and wander in the mountains and bewail my virginity, my friends and I. See, 4 things are very clear here about Jephthah's only child. His only child. He only had this daughter. It was all he had. First, she had a deep sense of respect for her father's integrity. I mean, Father, if you've made this bargain, if you made this deal with God, then it's up to you. You're going to have to keep it. You're going to have to keep your integrity. Second, she had a sense of responsibility. She realized she was responsible for part of it too. And then third, she shared shared with her father a deep reverence for the Lord. So she said, "You have given your word to the Lord, and the Lord has avenged you." This was her motivation. This was her motivation. And fourth, finally, she loved her father. In essence, she was willing to sacrifice herself based on the ideas of you promised the Lord and the Lord granted you victory. So I'm willing to take whatever is coming. I'm ready for it. Now this unbreakable vow of Jephthah has been the cause of a lot of speculation. And it's one of the most controversial interpretive problems in the book of Judges. See, some say that he didn't really sacrifice his daughter. That it was a different kind of a vow. But this unbreakable vow of Jephthah had a lot of things going to it. It depends on which way you look at it. See, Jephthah definitely sacrificed his daughter. He sacrificed his daughter. But did he sacrifice her life? Or did he sacrifice her future? Was she killed, or was she just separated for tabernacle or similar service? Since she is bewailing her virginity, she's going to be a virgin the rest of her life, whatever length that is. Maybe she was just given over to God for his service. Strong arguments and weak ones go both ways. And the bottom line is, we don't know for sure. Now, I believe that the preponderance of biblical information allows us to understand that she was not killed. I'd suggest that the meaning of Jephthah's vow was to give whatever emerged to the Lord. Whatever came out of my house, I'll give to the Lord. And in a manner of consecration was not the primary part of the vow, whether or not he was to burn a burnt offering or not. One would expect a primary stated reason for her grief to be her death instead. It was because I'll never marry. Literally, is what it meant. What she was saying, what it meant. I will never marry. I and my friends will weep over my virginity because I will never marry. One could not leave these verses without attention to the character of Jephthah's daughter. Like other heroines in Judges, like Deborah and Jael and all those others, she is calm in the chaos. All this chaos that's going on, she's remained calm. She didn't run away. She didn't flee. And because to do so would bring dishonor on her father and on the Lord. And she was not willing to do that. She was as much concerned about her father that her father would not have grandchildren. More concerned about her father not having grandchildren than she was about I have no children of her own. Okay, I'm going to leave you there with that, and you can read more about it, figure it on your own. Personally, I believe he sacrificed her to the Lord by giving her to the Lord's service, not because I believe it would be going far against God if he tried to sacrifice. God was against human sacrifice. He said, no, it's an abomination. So why would he accept this? So figure it out. And he sent her away for 2 months, and she went with her friends and bewailed her virginity in the mountains. And it was so at the end of the 2 months she returned her father and carried out his vow with which he had vowed. She knew no man. See, there it didn't say that he burnt her as an offering. It just said she knew no man. So it became a custom in Israel then that the daughters of Israel went 4 days each year to lament the daughter of Jephthah and the Gileadite. Okay, verse 12. The men of Ephraim gathered together, crossed over toward Zephon, and said to Jephthah, "Why did you cross over to fight against the people of Ammon, and did not call us to go with you? We will burn your house down and on you with fire." Now, doesn't that sound familiar? Remember back at Gibeon, the Ephraimites came over and why didn't you call us to come and help you? Well, he'd called them to come and help him, but it just didn't seem to work. Okay. And Jephthah said to them, he's a diplomat. Listen to this. "My people and I were in great struggle with the people of Ammon, and when I called you, you did not deliver me out of their hands. So when I saw that you would not deliver me, I took my life in my hands and crossed over against the people of Ammon, and the Lord delivered them into my hands. Why then have you come up to me this day to fight against me?" See, once before, again, the men of Ephraim reacted to their own inflated sense of importance. So they thought they were more important than what they really were. They challenged Gideon back in Judges 8. And here they went a little further. They charged Jephthah with a similar neglect, and they said, "Why did you go and fight the Amorites without calling us to go with you?" But then they threatened him with a horrible death. They said they're going to burn you alive, and your house, your family. Now, Ephraimites had demanded glory and praise in connection with their minor role in the Midianite victory back in chapter 8. But this time, they'd not even shown up. They haven't even been there, and yet they're complaining. Okay. Verse 4, "Now Jephthah gathered together all the men of Gilead and fought against Ephraim." Show you, Ephraim. "And the men of Gilead defeated Ephraim, because they said, 'You Gileadites are fugitives of Ephraim, all among the Ephraimites and among the Manassites.'" The Gileadites seized the fords on the Jordan before the Ephraimites arrived, and when an Ephraimite who escaped said, "Let me cross over," the men of Gilead would say to him, "Are you an Ephraimite?" And if he said no, then they would say to him, "Then say Sibboleth." And he would say, "Sibboleth," for he could not pronounce it right. So one was a Shibboleth, the other was a Sibboleth. The Ephraimites couldn't pronounce the SH in their language. Now, it's kind of like here in the States. We got people from Massachusetts that parks the car, and we got people down south that parks the car. And it's the same word, but it's pronounced. They pronounce it differently because they've got that either that drawl or the nasal, whatever it is. But it's a different inflections. See? So if they couldn't say it, if he couldn't pronounce it right, then he was the enemy. And then they would take him and kill him on the fords of the Jordan. And there fell at that time 42,000 Ephraimites. And Jephthah judged Israel 6 years. Then Jephthah and the Gilead died and was buried among his cities, the cities of Gilead. Now there were 6... Wait a minute, go back, another verse here, verse 9. He had 30 sons. Gilead had 30 sons. 30 sons, can you imagine that? And he gave away 30 daughters in marriage. So that was 60 kids. And he brought in 30 daughters from elsewhere for his sons. He was populating his country and bringing people together. Brought 30 daughters from elsewhere for his sons, and he judged Israel 7 years. Okay. Then Ibzan died and was buried at Bethlehem. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. I got over to Ibzan, missed back to Jephthah. Okay. Before I get to Ibzan, let me say this. There were 6 major judges in the book of Judges, measuring by the criterion of the amount of space devoted to them. That's what makes them major. And then we've already studied the minor judges, Shagmar, Tola, and Jair. And of course, the major judges are Othniel, Ehud, Deborah, Barak, Gideon, Jephthah, and Samson, who we'll see later. Now, Ibzan is the one we're getting to now in verse 9. He had 30 sons. It was Ibzan of Bethlehem, judged Israel. And he's the one that had 30 sons. And he gave away 30 daughters in marriage and brought in 30 daughters from elsewhere for his sons. And he judged Israel for 7 years. Then Ibzan died and was buried at Bethlehem. Now, Ibzan extended his tribal influence and no doubt his power by giving his daughters away in marriage to those outside the clan. Now, similarly, he brought in 30 women as wives from the outside, outside his clan, for his sons, and this extended the influence further and his prestige. Now, the total time that he judged Israel was 7 years, and after his death, he was buried in his home of Bethlehem. Now, we're in verse 11. After him came Elon, the Zebulite. He judged Israel, and he judged Israel 10 years. And Elon, the Zebulite, died and was buried at Ajalon in the country of Zebulun. Okay. So after Ibzan came Etan. Nothing is said of Etan's family, so we don't know much about him. Whether he had any sons or daughters, or whether he's wealthy, we know only that he was of the tribe of Zebulun. That's all we really know. And how God gave him recognition among the people as judges is again unknown. But God's ways are not limited, so we know that God had a reason for what he was doing. Okay, verse 13. After him, Abidan, the son of Hillel, the Parathonite, judged Israel. And he had 40 sons and 30 grandsons who rode on 70 young donkeys. He judged Israel 8 years. And then Abidan, the son of Hillel, the Parathonite, died and was buried in Parathon in the land of Ephraim, in the mountains of the Amalekites. Okay. So Abidan was the son of Hillel, and he was from Pithion, a town near Shechem. He led Israel for 8 years. Now we know that he was kind of wealthy because he had 30 grandsons and he rode on 70 donkeys, so it made him mean that he had some money there. He was known as by his family. Like Gideon, he had 70 descendants, and all there were 40 sons and 30 grandsons. Now, like Jair, his 70 descendants rode on 70 donkeys as a sign of prosperous, peaceful times. And after he died, he was buried in his own town, Parathon of Ephraim. So ends chapter 12. Next time we'll go into chapter 13 and moving right along. We're getting close to see old Samson, that story that we all love so much. It's been a good day. I enjoy seeing a lot of you in church on Sunday. That always makes me happy. I am also glad to be able to spend some time with you here, and I thank you for joining me. See you next week. Until then, may God bless you, keep you, may his face shine upon you, may his hand stay on you, and giving you blessings. Oh, so many blessings. God bless you. Love you. Good night.